We'll do it live.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Anthony with Mayhem Local Live. Mark Perry, once again.
Good morning.
We are going to talk jazz again, aren't
We're
we?
going to talk jazz, we're going to talk music, but we're going to talk some bad behind drumming.
Okay. So this morning, our guest, Luis Alicea.
That's correct.
The golden boy of drums. He is Spinelli drums endorsed. Toured the world with Meola.
Yep.
New Groove City.
Yeah.
Right? Goombi Ortiz.
That guy.
Okay. All right. He's got so much other stuff going on. We're going to get into it. Mr. Perry?
Well, I tell you what, one of the things I like to do is dive right into who you are and where you come from.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Things that people don't know about musicians is basically how they get started. And one of the things that I admire most about Luis is his beginnings, which are rooted in his faith and in his beliefs. So I want to cover a little bit of that with
Of
you,
course.
because a lot of your style comes from your background,
Yeah.
and it has a gospel base
Yeah,
to it.
well, you know, my granddaddy was a minister, so born and raised in church, so, you know, almost 7 days a week.
Right.
I lived inside church, and my uncle plays drums, my dad plays guitar, my other uncle plays bass, my aunt plays keys. So it was like it was like the Porches family. These guys played all day. So I was surrounded by music, whether I was home or I was in church.
Right.
So a lot of my background comes from the gospel era. A lot of my chops come from that. A lot of listening, the way I listen to music comes from that. You know, I have an old school dad, plays guitar, and I would see how he would practice every Saturday at home at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're still in bed and he's wailing away in the kitchen, you know? And so I grew up in that era, just always listening to certain things and certain details. And my dad was he was perfectionist.
Right.
When I started to play, I was already playing by the age of 4,
Right.
4 or 5. I was already, you know, that type of thing, where I would sit on my uncle's lap and he would play the bass drums for me and I would just play tops.
Right.
But it got to a point that I started playing with my dad more often and going out to do weddings and other parties and events. And our rehearsals, I'm 9 years old, 8 years old. And our rehearsals were 13, 14 hours.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with the band, where, hey, we start a song here, and if we messed up here, it ain't pick it up.
Right.
No, we go back to the beginning.
Right. Right.
So that's my upbringing and that. And the church thing, for me, it's a big part of who I am, because it does solidify something where I do it with a different purpose. You
Right,
know, I do it, and I still do, because I still play at Grace Family. I still play at the current church that I'm at with the Church of the Way.
Right.
You know, so those things like that, to me, I hold, you know, dear to me, because those were my beginnings.
And it plays throughout
And
your
it-
music.
and it plays
you
throughout my
can
music.
hear that. Those people that are familiar with gospel and that sound,
They still
it's
hear
a
it.
very unique sound, and you
Yeah.
hear it. It's almost like when you hear a B3.
Oh yeah,
And you know
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on with that, but your playing absolutely is rooted in your gospel.
And gospel and God, yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's always been that way, and I don't think it'll ever change, because it's who I am.
So now, what kind of drum kit did you start on? And that's how I'm going to kick it over to you.
Man, you know, the first one that I originally remember is the first one that they bought my uncle when he was a kid, and there was a box. Remember those?
Yeah.
So I had a black box,
Wow.
and I was young
Uh-huh.
and dumb. I didn't learn to appreciate
Yeah.
what that was. Now it's like they're unbelievably
Yes.
like expensive.
Yeah. You can get one.
But those were my first, and then he had 8 custom Zildjians, which I didn't know. Back in the day, I was just a kid playing drums. I didn't know nothing. You know, we didn't have internet. I didn't know what things were worth. I couldn't go to a store. There was no Sam Ash at the time. We didn't do that. So it was like, man, if I would have known what I had, it'd be different.
Right.
You know,
right.
but yeah, I ended up owning, because my uncle, when he moved from Jersey, we're from Jersey.
Right.
He got married, moved to Florida. He tells me, the kid is yours. I'm like, what? The kid is yours. I'm like, okay, cool. But it was also a kit with just top heads, nothing on the bottom,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
a lot of cloth.
Right.
It was 70s,
Right,
man.
exactly.
So I was like, okay, cool. But I didn't pre-put it was a box.
Right.
And then that sat in the closet, and then the church always had a drum set, so we played on that. And they had something called like a track. It was a weird old drum set. It sounded cool.
Never heard of it. Yeah.
But then by the time I was about 13, 14, my grandma bought me my first kit. And she bought me a Tama Rockstar.
Oh my goodness. Grandma loved it.
Yeah, grandma loved it. My friend was selling that kit. He goes, hey, listen, man, I got a brand new kit. I haven't even taken out the box yet.
Right.
It was $450 at the time. And my grandma goes, well, he needs it. Take it, we'll buy it.
Right.
And that was my first actual kit. I was like 13 when it was my kit, like my thing,
Right.
which was cool. And I kept that and I passed that down to, I passed that down, I think, to my brother-in-law or something like that.
Wow.
After I got married years after. I kept it forever. And then I passed it down. One thing you're going to know, you'll learn about me, I don't like to keep things.
Right.
I pass them on to other generations. I want them to enjoy what I couldn't, because I didn't grow up getting drums. I couldn't practice at home. I didn't have a drum kit at home. My practice was pillows, books, and me banging on my feet at home. That's what it was. And I got lucky if I was able to get something to play too.
Right.
Because back then it was just those Fisher, remember the Fisher, not Fisher Price, but the Fisher, Fisher studio things where you had a tape deck, you had this, and I would have to ask my dad, can I play music on this, So I was lucky enough to hear a lot of music. I was really surrounded by music all the time, so my upbringing in the gospel thing was great. And it led me from there to school in high school. When I actually joined the band in high school, that's when I really started picking up like, oh, Dave Weckl, Steve Gadd, and Vinny Colaiuta, those guys like that. I'm listening to that, then I got into more like Ray Barretto and then Giovanni Hidalgo when I heard for the first time the Dizzy Gillespie All-Star Band. And I'm like, yo, who are these guys? Ignacio Berroa. I'm like, yo, my mind went from the church thing to like, wait a minute, this is a whole nother world of music that I'm not paying attention to.
Exactly, because it's outside of your microcosm.
And so now I'm like a mixture of all this fusion thing that leads me to where I'm at now. And I do give a lot of thanks to those guys like Weckl and all, because I did study them a lot. Once I got my hands on some tapes, I was like, okay, I like this. And my dad, unfortunately, he was accepted to Juilliard's.
Oh wow!
As a younger man, and what happened was with the church thing, because the church was so square at the time, and he wasn't allowed to perform. So being that said, he can't perform at the school. He can only perform at the church. My dad was like, "And what's the point of going to school?"
Right.
So then that just killed my dad.
Right.
That was the one thing that my dad didn't do with me. Right. My dad was like, "Oh, they got performances. You go.
Go do it. Yeah.
Go do it." And that's what like opened me to a lot of other venues and a lot of other avenues to learn, where I am now.
Wow.
And it's taken me some places.
Sure. Absolutely.
And into some serious people.
Yeah.
But my beginnings is where I end up going back to all the time for the younger generation or the new generation now. Right. We're like, hey man, I don't have this. Okay, here. Right. And I try to bless somebody else because they blessed me when I was young. Exactly. So I try to do the same thing and I pass it on, not because I want recognition, because I can care less about that, but I know what it's like to not have.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
I tell you, you pass things on where I don't let things go.
Yeah.
So like my wife, when we go to the storage unit that we have, because the house is not big enough, she's like, why? Why do you have all of these drum sets? And I go, those are babies. I can't get rid of those. I can't part with those. Like you said, your first was a Tama Rockstar.
That was my first kit.
I have a Tama Chrome Rockstar, all silvered out, and I have all the Zildjian titanium symbols to go with it. And I know it's dated.
All pennies.
I know it's dated, but I can't part with it. I can't get rid of it.
You should.
Way back in the early '90s when Doc Steve Wackles was running
Okay.
Mars.
Okay.
Yeah, I got from him. I got a Mapex kit. It was the standard 4-piece,
Yeah.
5-piece kit, and I was like, give me 2 of them so I can have double bass and add the 12 and the 16 toms and I still have that too.
I was in that phase where I would mix two, and I had just 2 drum kits, but they were different colors. And I would just mix them up. I was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah. If it did what you wanted it to do, that's all that matters.
My dad used to look at me like, what's wrong with you?
It's funny because before we had my son, my wife would say, why are you hanging on to these? And I go, someday I'll pass them down to my son.
Right.
That's an important thing for a dad, especially a drummer dad, right? Yeah. And then now my kid's 12 years old. He's like, can I play the kits? And I'm like, no, don't touch them. Those are mine. You can have them when I'm dead, That's how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Still have a hard time letting go, right?
Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah, I don't hold on to anything. Not that I don't care. It's just, to me, I'm the type of person, I'll play on whatever. Even though I do right now, I play on Spinelli drums.
Right.
It's not about the drums itself. It's just they feel great.
Right.
They sound great. But I don't, like, I was at one point, I had like 14 kits at the house.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what do I want to do with all these drums?
Right.
And I just started pushing drums out of the house. And he's like, what? My wife's like, why? I was like, I'm getting to a point where I don't want to keep all this stuff.
Right, of course.
My kids are not that interested in, he has a kid in his room.
Mm-hmm.
He's not interested like that. And I see the way the music industry has been evolving into something else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to push him in the industry anymore.
Right.
It's just a different time.
It
really is.
It's
so
a whole different
I'm just
world out
pushing
there.
stuff out, whatever I can. I just try to not get rid of, but at least bless somebody else.
Right.
Hey, put it into use.
There you go.
I'll tell you what I've actually seen, and being that I am old, okay, and I accept it, I am old. We've seen, the drumming industry, I guess you would call it, evolve. So, several times, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing that I love now, especially with all of like the TikToks that you see and the Instagram videos, the girls, the little girls,
Oh my God,
the 15 and 16-year-old little girls that are out there and they're making their videos,
killing it,
and they are awesome.
Yeah, they are.
Killing
I've seen them.
Tampa Bay had a girl that I was so blessed and fortunate to have met. I cannot speak highly enough about her, but I'll never forget going to Seminole Music and Sound where John Spinelli was, managing years ago, and he introduced me to Natalie DiPergola.
Yep.
And she was like 10, 12 years old. She was just this little girl. And he said, Anthony, wait till you see her. And she sat down on the kit and killed it.
Wow.
And then she's her mom, Kelly, who is such a sweetheart, super nice person. She turns around and she says, hey, Wednesday night or Thursday night, we're going to be over at such and such on the beach. You should come. Nat's going to play. She's going to sit in with the band. And I was like, yeah, I'll try. And John said, yeah, come on out. And I went. This little girl sat in a set with a band and killed it like she was, been playing for 20 years.
Wow.
She was amazing. In her time of watching her develop, I got to watch her. She took lessons from John Blackwell from Prince.
Oh, wow.
Okay. She was taking lessons from all these people that were so well-rounded in different areas. And I would have thought with her skills and everything that she would have ended up in rock. And no, like the bands that she's with, I think she's Moreau. You're right. I think she's with the band Moreau with Sebastian.
Okay.
And
I gave her one master class.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
She came
Come
to
on.
my house. Yeah.
What an amazing little drummer. But see, that's again that progression of the drumming industry now, where all these little girls got interested in it, and now that's what I see more of anything.
Justin Lee Schultz has a sister who's a drummer.
Yeah.
She
plays bass too.
And she does.
She plays bass.
I mean, that whole family is just
They're all
multi-talented.
They're multi-talented, yeah.
She traveled with Dave Coz, and I mean, the women coming up doing percussion are second to nobody.
Yeah, they really are.
Second to nobody.
Little forces. So you mentioned Spinelli drums. I want to talk to you about that because we're all so familiar with Pearl and Yamaha and Tama and the mainstream
Market,
brands,
yeah.
right? The market. Years ago, the guys from DW and Dean, they left that and they started their side project, which was Crush drums. And
which I had a set.
Oh, I thought they were amazing kits. Like I loved those kits. But again, that I guess they got too big too quick and didn't make it any further, right?
Yeah.
But Spinelli drums was an innovator in the product that they put out. So I kind of want you to tell me a little bit about your experience when playing with them. As far as like the tone, the feel, the usage of them. Like I know that they're floating head or
Well, it's a floating drum.
It's not connected to the body of the drum.
No.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I know that's part of your sound.
Well, yeah. The drum itself, John makes an amazing product, but John's also a drummer that makes drums for drummers. You got other companies guys that dabble in drums, making drums. It's not the same thing when you have a drummer who understands the instrument and what he's looking for.
Right.
So John understands his instrument and made his drum to sound a specific way. Now, can I make any drum sound that way? Yes, that's my sound. I can sit behind any kit and make it sound the way I want to because it's my hand. But John's drums, those drums, they feel totally different, all because of the way the design is. So the drum has nothing touching itself. It's from the head from the top, head from the bottom, and the rims with the actual bars. That's what with the tensioners. That's what holds it together.
Right.
So when you tune top, you tune the bottom, so you get a perfect pitch and a perfect balance.
Oh wow.
So even if one lug is off by a hair, it's still off on top and bottom.
Okay.
So it's evenly distributed.
Right. Okay.
So when you hit it and you get the bounce back, you're like, oh, wait a minute. And then the way he makes his bearing edges, you can either have it to where it rings enough or it just dead stops. So he has different edges for different situations.
So you have a lot more control.
So you have a lot.
Sound is
Yes.
be. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So then now the difference is that now when you're playing a drum where you have equal tension, then you want to learn how to balance. Now you got to play the balancing game. What head do I want on top and what head do I want on the bottom? You can't put the same head,
right?
Because then it's gonna not. Usually when we have normal drums, we try to tune bottom heads a little bit tighter because it gives you less resonance and it chokes the drum a little bit more. With this, you have to have a 1 ply on the bottom, 2 ply on top, or 1 and 1. So that way you can get an even distributed sound. So, but John's drums is just, it's the feel of how they react to the drummer. And I get the same reaction when people come and they play my kit for the first time, like, oh my God, dude, they sound great, but the feel, you can't replicate that. And I'm telling you, I've had all types of drums and I've had them in all scenarios, and everywhere I go, it's the same thing. I'm like, okay, you play the top of the line and you feel good with that. And then you go play John's drums. You're like, dang, this feels different. It's innovated. They're light. They're very light because they're only 5 ply shells.
Okay. All right.
So there's not heavy. There's not much weight to it. And then everything's basically aluminum. And then the way the mountain brackets, it's all mounted with just a glide mount. There's no torquing of any type of screws or anything like that.
And you get
so setup
sound out of that.
And the fact that you can get sound because there's less hardware on the drum. There's not so much hardware to weigh it down. You get natural sound.
Wow. One of the things that John had said to me before he introduced me to you a while ago was he said, any instrument Luis plays, he plays for a reason. And any hardware that he has, he plays it for a reason. So it kind of made sense, with Spinelli drums. Spinelli drums is not a mass producing drum factory.
Right.
They're not just putting out 1,000 kits and they're in, all the Sam Ashes across the country. It's more of a custom type kit. I know that not too long ago, he posted a video from a young girl, another girl, that got that pink drum set that they got. And it was amazing. But, just the sound and everything that was coming out of it from just that little short YouTube clip that I saw, Jesus, like I shook my head. I said, he did it again. Like,
Wow.
Yeah.
everything he does is custom. So,
Yep. And the thing is that no matter what you play on, those kits sound big.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a hard hitting drummer
Right.
to get the sound.
get that
They
fat sound
naturally
out of it.
sound that big,
Wow.
which is what I like and what attracted me. I've known John before he started Spinelli drums, when he was doing whack drums.
yeah.
And
That's
he
where
introduced
the beginning was.
introduced me to that, and I was like, John, these are great. And then I remember seeing him at NAMM. I think it was 2019. I saw him at NAMM, and I'm like, John. He's like, yeah, dude, I'm trying to pitch something new. I'm here by myself. I'm like, why? He goes, but I got something coming down the pipe that I want you to be involved in. 2020 came around, and I'm like, I didn't hear from John. 21 came through. He goes, here, I want you to play these. And he gave me the first kit. I was like, dude, these sound unreal. He goes, take them home. I'm like, what? Like, take them home. They're yours. I'm like, no, John, I can't do that. He goes, take them home. They're yours. I was like, I want you to be a part of this. I'm like, and so I've seen the growth of John in the last couple, 4 or 5 years has been insane.
Yeah.
And, and they just get better and better. And now he's producing to the point where he's got gong drums.
Oh, wow.
And then he's got like different sides of depth drums, like shorties. And it's like, it's insane the amount. And then the thing is that they still sound exactly the same. Everything sounds the way they're supposed to sound. It's a Spinelli drum kit.
And that's the thing, I guess, not being a drummer, I'm a vocal person, vocalist. But drummers have a language you guys have all your own, particularly when you're talking about your kids. So I can only imagine that your response to the Spinelli brand now is going to be consistent and probably continue to grow as that communication between drummers get further out there.
Of course.
So,
Of course.
That's got to be great
John,
to be a part of that.
John knows that his drums, for me, I think his drums are the best. He knows that. His drums are the best. They feel the best. They sound the best. But on top of that, it's a local company that I can go to and say, John, I need this. John, let's try this. And he's willing to do that. I can't do that with a big company. I'm endorsed with TOCA Percussion, right? And even with them, as big a company they are, I just can't go and approach them and say, hey, listen, I got an idea. I want to do this. Can't do that, because they got their people already, and I respect that. John,
you don't get to walk in and be like, don't you know who I am?
I wish.
I toured with Julio Iglesias.
And I wish, and I know Mark Petrocelli, who's the guy who brought me in, and he's right now the drum tech for Styx.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So on top of being TOCA's guy, so he brought me in with my friend Eric Pisa, and still, even then, I still can't just walk in and be like, hey, I can't order around. And with John, I don't order, but I go, John, I'm thinking about something. If I want to, we can, because I have a local guy that builds them here that we can do that, and I have that relationship with. Now it stinks sometimes that I go on tour and I can't take Spinellis with me because they're not catered everywhere else.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So when I'm with Al, it's Yamaha, because that's what Al's used to, and that's what they can get.
Yeah.
They can't get a Spinelli kit anywhere.
Those kits are there.
SIR doesn't carry Spinelli kits. Nobody knows who they are. Right. So that's kind of that's where I'm like, oh, this sucks, and I got to compensate. But John, he's such a sweetheart. John understands that, and he goes, dude, you play what you have to play. Mm-hmm. I respect that from him, because anybody else would be like, well, you can't take my drums and you can't, don't do it. Don't post anything. Right. John's not like that. Yeah. I have that really good relationship with John, which is great. He's just an all around good dude.
With Mayhem Magazine, there were several times where we did photos of drummers at shows. And if they fly in for a gig and they don't bring their equipment, they'll have a house kit, right? Yeah. And then we'll do a bunch of photos, we'll do an interview, and then we would get a phone call like 2 weeks later and they'd say, can't put any pictures up. I go, why not? well, our drummer's endorsed by blah, blah, blah.
Right, right.
But he was playing a blah, blah, blah kit, and we can't have that out there. It was like, really? A picture?
Right.
You know how many people
Photograph.
had cell phone pictures of that guy playing that day?
Yeah.
But the product placement and the endorsements
It's a big deal.
Serious
It's a
thing.
big deal.
Big deal.
It's a big deal.
I know with Spinelli and Spinelli drums, was John and Casey getting you your drum heads, the custom covers for the front?
No.
No drum static?
No.
So Casey Grillo, Queensryche drummer,
Right.
he started drum static
Right.
years ago, and he was doing the light up drums for the heads for Kiss.
Right.
You know, he was doing, and he's the go-to guy.
Yeah.
Like, he really, and his products are amazing. He does some crazy stuff. And forever, like, whenever you see the Grammys and the music
Right, that's all,
awards,
all the Super Bowl.
All those,
all a
Super Bowl,
all of
yeah.
them, they're him.
That's
those
all
are all
Casey.
his stuff.
Yeah.
crazy.
You know?
He's
That
another
is
great
insane.
dude. He's
Yeah,
another great
insane.
friend of mine. He's another great dude.
Yeah.
Casey's just amazing too to work with. But no, I've never done heads because the thing is that with Al, you know, we were getting kits everywhere we go.
So you wouldn't travel with your own equipment.
I did it the very first year that I went out with Al.
Right.
That I went out with my drums, and at the time I was playing Gretsch, and I just traveled with my kit. You know, that lasted about a year because then it was easier just to hire
Right.
a guy to come in, bring drums for every venue, and just have stuff there.
Yep.
Would they show up with the same kit? Like you say,
So-
I want an 8, a 10, a 12.
Yes.
Okay. So
Same
it's not like-
sizes.
so I think as a drummer, it would kind of be cool, you know, not for the artist that's, you know, you're supporting, but I think it would kind of be cool. Like if every city you sat down at the kit and went, okay, what am I going to do with this? You know,
Well-
like if it was different every single time,
Well, no,
that would make you stretch your brain a little bit.
well, not really.
Drive you crazy, stretch your brain.
Because here's the problem. Then it's not stretching brain, but it's also, remember, when you're out on tour, you have a stage plot.
Right.
You got input list that if we start adding drums, your sound guy is gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
So
I know when we're
you
putting on
can't
events,
do that. Yeah, you can't
When
do
we
that.
get the drummer's kit,
Oh, I know.
when we get that backline order,
Yeah.
that has to be that backline order, because if it's not, you got a drummer who's not a real happy person, and now you've got a contract that's in jeopardy.
And with me,
Yeah.
I'm happy with what I get. I
Right,
never
right.
complain with what I get, but it's more like, oh man, I wasn't planning on and it's happened with us where Al goes, okay, we're fine with a 5-piece, and then he goes, no, let's add a second floor tom.
Mhm.
So when I get to the venue or I get to there's a second floor tom, I'm like, okay, and then I'm cool. I tune in, I play it, but then our sound guy's like, I don't have an input.
Right.
Now I got to put this input all the way at the end of the channel list and this and that. That's where it becomes, a little bit awkward for guys. So to me, I play on whatever, but the writer specifically especially with Al, it states it's 10, 12, 14, 16, or 16, 18, whichever one comes with.
Right.
But it's always 2 toms, 2 floor toms, kick drum. I'm good with either 20, 22. I don't have a preference, but it's always a Yamaha, either a Yamaha Absolute or a Yamaha Touring. It's either or. Sometimes, like the Germany stuff, we were getting some really, really old kits. Like
Really?
they were really old, but sounded great.
Yeah, that'd have been
I was
cool.
like, that's cool.
See?
Yeah.
When we went to Japan and got Japan made stuff with Billboard Live. They had their own kit. They had Billboard Live patches and everything. I was like, oh, this is cool, So you get to see other kits,
Right.
that stuff. But it's definitely not the same playing your own. I got to do a lot of tweaking when I get there. I'm like, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. I got to play around with it. It's like anybody else, even with percussion, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We're tweaking, we're moving because it's not our gear. We're not what we're used to.
Right.
So, but that, I think that's the challenge, and I think that's the fun part. Even though you know what you're going to get as far as sizes and as far as how much,
You still got to put it
but
together.
you got to put it together.
One of the things I always laugh at, and being the former owner of Bourbon Street, and running concerts
Yeah.
out of there, you know, and the countless venues I've been to. I love when they do like a benefit concert, right? And the back line is set up,
Right.
and the next band that pops up, they just plug in, you know, and plug and play, right?
Yeah.
The drummer always has to bring his own snare,
Right,
and
right.
he always has to bring his own cymbals, right?
Symbols,
'Cause
absolutely.
nobody wants you beating theirs up. But the funniest thing is, you know, in all the bands, they're all friends, so they're all hanging out on the side. And then there's this one drummer. It'll always be in the middle. It'll never be at the end or at the beginning. He'll get up and he'll be a lefty, and he'll go, all right, I need to move everything from this side over to here, and then I want this, and I'm moving this, and moving this. And you watch all the other drummers going,
Oh my
oh,
God. Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in that
They just
situation.
destroy the kit.
I've been in that situation where I did it for Lenny. Lenny White's lefty, and he saw us at Tony Hall, and so he goes, well, I play right. I said, put it there. And he goes, yeah, but put it there. He goes, okay, I'm going to say no to Lenny White. It's Lenny White. He goes, Lenny, what do you need? He goes, well, I use this. Put it. I'm like, and then he's looking at me like, then Goombi goes to me, he goes, hey, but you know, you have the rest of the show to play. I'm like, dude, I can play on anyway. I'm not that I'm ambidextrous, but I can play left-handed. No problem. It'll be a little bit of a challenge to do Al stuff at that speed, but I can, you know, it's not a big deal. I can change it. And there's guys that get all bent out of shape because you got to change for. But I'm like, how can I get bent out of shape for Lenny White?
Right.
I'm like, this guy, you know, invented what we do. It was like, hello, you know, this dude he's the legend.
That's the good thing about when I'm doing shows. We usually have several kits.
Yeah.
Risers, you know, we can roll
Just
them
roll
in
it
and roll
in.
out, you know,
Oh,
so
man.
we can accommodate that. But those smaller events that we're doing,
it's
where
hard.
we have one kit,
That's hard. That's hard.
You gotta accommodate. You have to do it.
But that's what separates a lot of musicians from other people,
Right.
Especially drummers. Because
Adaptability.
I'm adaptable to whatever kit you give me. And if you tell me, hey man, we're gonna be using cymbals, one thing I've learned to do throughout the years is respect everybody else's stuff.
Right.
If it's not mine, I try not to beat it up. I try not to abuse it.
Right.
Because it's not mine. And if I break it, hey man, I'll own it. You know what I'm saying? I'll own
There
it.
you go.
But that comes along too with when you buy your gear, you learn how to respect gear because you buy it.
Yeah.
But people
You know
don't
what it
respect
takes.
their gear
Yeah.
because they don't buy it. They just get it.
Right. They get it.
And-
They
and-
do it what they want.
So I've always learned to respect other people's stuff. I don't touch it. I don't play it. I always act. I get on stage and the first thing I do when I see a tech guy, can I sit down? It's our show.
Right,
I'm
right.
the one playing drums, and I ask the tech, can I sit down? He goes, yeah, okay, cool. And I start moving stuff. I'm still that guy.
Right.
I don't have that chip on my
That's
shoulder. I
beautiful,
don't have
man.
an
No,
ego.
that's beautiful.
It's just, you know, it's a thing that I've always been taught to respect somebody else's stuff.
Talk to us a little bit about touring life, because I was a little shocked when we were at the open house over at Spinelli's and you said you were gonna take a little breather for a little bit.
Yeah, man. Well, the breather is more because family. You know, I got kids and I've been married now 22 years with my wife, and it's like I want to show some sort of support at home, not just go out and make money and bring it home and do what, you know?
Right.
So now I got a 16-year-old daughter, I got a 9-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter that I think at this point in time, I should be more at home. So I decided that I didn't want to go back out. So I've been with Al now. I started in 2015 and I ended 2024 of August. Our
Okay.
last show was in Germany, the Jazz Open, which that was phenomenal. That run, 2024 run was great because it was mainly all Europe, which was really cool. And I just decided, I said, man, you know what? I really want to take some time off and just focus on my family, focus on my kids. You know, I don't want to fall into that stigma of, man, you lost your family. Oh man, you know, you're touring and you forgot
Right.
about this. And
Right.
I didn't want to fall into that. You know, I'm really, that's my, you know,
That's their upbringing. That comes from
but that's really my success.
Right.
Them. My success is them.
Right.
It's not touring, it's not making all this money, it's not making it. That's not my success. My success is them.
That's beautiful.
You know, and I want them to see dad at home. You know, I missed birthdays, I missed anniversaries, I missed, you know, so many things, holidays that we can be spending together, but I'm out.
Right.
And my wife understands that. But at the same time, I'm not getting any younger, and that time I'm going to lose.
You can't
I can't
Once
get
it's
it
gone
back.
Once
I
it's
can't get it
gone.
back. Now I've toured, I've seen the world, not just with Al, but with Julio Iglesias.
Yes.
You know, when I got that call, I was like, really? Like they're calling me to do what? You know, and I remember when I got the call, I was driving our not tour bus, but our 15 passenger van. We were going to Connecticut or something like that, and I'm the one driving the band because our tour manager decided to book and leave the last
You
show.
were driving the van. too?
Yeah. So
Nice.
I'm like, okay, so I got stuck and there's me, Goombi on the side, and we're driving. And Goombi gets a call and he goes, yo, we gotta pull over. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're getting a phone call, but we gotta pull over. You gotta take this phone call.
Right.
I'm like, okay. And the one who called me was Mike Skaggs. So Mike is like, and I didn't know Mike. I knew of him. I didn't
Right.
know him. He goes, hey man, we got an opportunity. We need a drummer for a couple months, you know, maybe longer, to do the Julio Iglesias tour. And I'm like, okay, so where's the audition? He goes, oh, there's no audition. We're
Right.
on tour.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. He goes like, well, I got to talk to Al's office and see what can I do because I'm not gonna just jump ship.
Right, right.
I don't do that. So then when I found out that the schedule, there was no schedule conflict. I said I came home, and the first thing Mike comes and goes, well, I'm gonna meet you at your house and I'll bring you the list. It was 2 pages long of songs. I'm like, oh, so when do we go out? Next month? He goes, 2 weeks. I'm like,
You got 2 weeks to
okay.
learn.
You know, so we did that. And it was, oddly enough, it was just like a lot of this music I knew.
Right.
So, you know, it was those things like that where I get those calls and Goombi was like, listen, man, from now on, you've played, you're with you remember, you're with Al Di Meola.
Right.
You're always going to be associated now to Return to Forever and those guys, Chick Corea, because he's Al Di Meola.
Right.
So you're going to be associated. You're not going to get another thing of, oh, you have to rehearse.
Right.
Or you have to audition. It's not
That's not a
that. They're
thing
going to
anymore.
call you because they want you,
Yeah.
because they know you can
They know
handle
your
the type of
sound, they
music.
got you. Yeah.
So I was like, man, that's when I really was like, where am I?
Yeah.
You know? And all that went by in a blur. It did. It went by in a blur because I was from plane, out of plane, from this country to that country. And I'm like, it's all a blur,
Right.
but also my family became this.
Bar as well.
And I don't want that.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that, like, you know, you're going to get a phone call, you're not going to audition anymore. I remember, you know, back at Seminole Music and Sound, John used to do a lot of drum clinics, you know,
Yeah.
where they brought in artists. Greg Bissonette had come in.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that he said that I never forget is he said that back in the day, when he was starting out and he was in the studio with a lot of people, he was known for timing. That's it. He was like a human metronome.
Right.
And they would call him because they knew that he could keep time. It wasn't about technique. It wasn't
Right,
about
right.
speed. It wasn't about,
Right.
you know, the fills and the solos. It was all about the time. And he would say, I got so many gigs and phone calls because people
Just
knew
because of that,
I
right.
could stay in the pocket and hit the timing with no hassle. And it's just, you know, I guess those things are important, especially when you're
Yeah.
at that level. You know,
Well, remember,
they know your style. They know how you are.
at
You don't
that-
need to audition.
remember, just it's like anything else. You're not the artist. You're there as a hired gun to support the artist.
Yeah,
Right.
but here's the thing. What Gumby was saying to you is you're not trying to be that guy anymore.
Yeah, no.
You're that guy. Okay.
It's-
You're that guy.
You know, and it's funny enough because I don't see myself in
Of
that,
course.
and that's it. And
That's why you have to be told.
when people see me like today, like I know you,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I just like, okay, cool. Hey, what my name's Lewis, you know, I don't see myself in that because I just love what I just love to
Yeah.
do what I do.
Yeah.
I don't do it for no glory. I don't do it for no recognition. I just do it because I really genuinely like music.
Right.
But I've also come to a point where I like my family and I like my time at home. I like being able to just play locally, get my mind fresh with new artists maybe and help them out in certain ways, get them produced or lead them to something different. But I'm happy with where I'm at. Like
That's a
I'm
beautiful
really,
thing, man.
it's great because a lot of musicians can't say that they're happy where they're at. I'm really happy where I'm at, you know? And the fact that I still get to play with a lot of my friends because they're here,
They're right here.
Yeah.
you know?
Tampa's full of
Tampa Bay
artists.
is full
A
of the
bunch.
best artists.
A
that
bunch.
they'll find
So
on
the
planet.
fact that I can go from playing straight ahead jazz with some guys that I have here, or go from that to rock to R&B.
Right.
It's like, where do I get that? I don't get that on tour.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that you have done. You're on 5 different albums. Is that correct?
Maybe more.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's a bunch
of
more.
the 5 top ones, what are your?
Well, definitely the Meola 40th anniversary
Right.
Elegant Gypsy. That's a live record that I'm on. The New Groove City, which Goombi gave me my open door. You know, that New Groove City wasn't an accident, but it was something that Goombi put together, and he had another drummer, which was Johnny Z.
Right.
And Johnny Z was playing with Goombi at the time. And Goombi's like, man, can you record drums on this? I'm going to split you between you and Johnny. And I'm like, yeah, I record at home. He goes, okay, well, try this.
Right.
And it was my demo draft that made the record. I didn't even have to edit. He goes, don't edit nothing.
No,
Give me that.
yeah.
And after that is when he told Johnny, he goes, Johnny, sorry, man, I'm going in a new direction. And I felt bad because I took somebody else's gig, but Goombi was like, listen, this is going to lead to something else.
Right.
And Johnny still blew up doing other things.
Right.
But, you know, the New Groove City record, that's one of my, I hold that because that was a project that it solidified kind of a marking for me here in Tampa.
Right.
That record. And then another record that I'm on with another band, the Alan Carmen Project.
Right.
You know, you're talking about Philippe Sace, Rick Braun, Goombi Ortiz, Alan Carmen, you know, myself. The list goes on of musicians that are on those records. You know, so that kind of played a lot. Through Goombi, I met a guitar player from Russia, Roman Mironishchenko.
Good. That came out good.
This dude, he was, and he still does, but he found a sound. This guy was a young Al Di Meola.
Wow.
Sound just like him.
Wow.
I mean, he followed Al. Goombi met him playing with Al when he was a kid. This dude is something else, but he took, Electrik Rendezvous, which is another record of ours, another band, Warrior.
I was going to cover that. Yeah.
And we went to Russia because of that guy. He took us to Russia to the Kaluga Jazz Fest. You know, so those records are, and then I have a bunch of records that people from town, from Ari and the Alibis to countless just local artists that have called me up and say, hey, can you record on this one? Sure. So there's a ton of people that I've recorded with. I've worked a lot with a producer, John Seda.
Right.
So John's produced a lot of stuff. And if they know John was the head guy for Audix microphones at the time. You know, so I've done a lot of stuff with them, Paris All-Stars. And Eric Maldonado, he's another one. He calls me a lot for sessions and stuff like that. So I can't tell you how many records, the Justice League, you know, with them, we recorded some stuff. How many countless records that I'm on, I don't know. I don't keep track. Because like I said, I'm not a trophy guy. I don't keep trophies everywhere.
Right.
I just like to work and be able to be showcased, you know, with everybody else. That's about it.
So tell me this. What's your dream gig?
Let me tell you something. It almost came true. It almost came true because I really like this guy. Alejandro Sanz has been one of the artists that I've listened to forever. I met Mike Ciro, and I recorded with Mike Ciro through a common friend of ours called Bobby Roman. And Mike Ciro is Alejandro's MD. So we recorded for Bobby, and he's like, dude, you know, we're going to lose our drummer.
Oh,
you know, we're losing our drummer. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, man, things don't look good between him and Alejandro. And I'm like, dude, but you talk about, you know, this. He goes, yeah, just start studying. I'm like, okay.
Say, we're going to lose our drummer. And Luis was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I'm like, oh, man. But then Alejandro also was going in another direction where he was hiring a female drummer because this is the new thing.
Right.
Female band. And really, he already had Glenda Lee playing keys. He already had other girls in the band. So I'm like, you know what? It's a look for him. And I get it. And I understand that. But just the fact that I was considered for that, I was like, yo, because it's a gig that's a big pop gig. Even though Julio's was a great gig, I
Right.
mean, we were doing arenas every night, which was great. But Alejandro was the type of music that I listened to, and why?
Right.
That's what introduced me to Vinny Colaiuta.
Oh, wow.
He's on
Okay.
all of his first records. It's all Vinny.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm like, dude, this dude, I'm like, who the hell is the drummer on this record? And I'm like, I'm trying to find notes and, clip. I'm like, where? And I finally see Vinny Colaiuta. And I see them live perform on the MTV show. He had an MTV live recording, and Vinny's, I'm like, oh my God. I was jaw dropped. I was like, I want that. And ever since then, I became an Alejandro Sanz fan. Like, I knew all his records. I knew all his songs by heart, all the feels, because I'm attached to his drummer. Now, now that I'm older, it's like there's no such thing as a dream gig.
Right,
It's just,
right,
for me, it's
right.
just a gig. When I was younger, yeah, that was a dream gig, and I was like, and now my biggest thing, and he doesn't see it this way. It's funny, he doesn't see it this way, but I also grew up listening to Dave Weckl, which I thought I was listening to Dave. I got a lot out of Dave. But I was really listening to when I first got to play with Jay Oliver, who was his piano player. So when I got to play with Jay for the first time back at Spinelli's place, I'm like, it was like this little hamster in my brain was like going on, and I'm like, I'm retracting back to when I was like 12, 13 years old playing, and I'm like, I really wasn't listening to Dave Weckl. I was listening to this guy.
Right.
This guy's playing in his placement between him and Dave. Because when I sat down with Jay for the first time, it was like I've played with him forever.
Wow.
It was like we were just playing. I'm like, and he's looking at me, we're laughing. I'm like, yo. He goes, bro, I've been listening to Dave, which I thought was Dave. No, but I've been listening to you
All this time.
So me and Jay became really good friends. We talk a lot. And whenever he comes down, he calls me, what are you doing? I'm like, well, we're going to Spinelli's, I guess. He's like, okay. So I've met a lot of people along the way. I've played with some amazing guitar players, like with Al, of course. Steve Vai has joined us on stage. Played with Stanley Jordan.
Right.
So it's taken me along for a nice ride. It really has. And I've also played with some really like talented musicians here in town, like Ari and the Alibis.
Yeah.
It was a great band.
Electric Rendezvous.
Electric Rendezvous, which is mine. Yeah. Electric Rendezvous right now, and we're still working.
Yeah.
Electric Rendezvous, we just recorded a new video type of say.
Okay.
Which Goombi put a clip out. And we're doing that with Micah or Gemma and
Okay.
Sam Ash Direct. So it's nice, but it's like at the end of the day, I just want to make good music. Do I want to go on tour? If it was the right setting,
Right.
but not right now. I like the fact that I can take my kids to school,
Sure.
pick them up. I still get to work at night, go play, different venues and different clubs and get to see. Because it's funny, I did a gig last weekend that I haven't done in a while with Jam Jones and Adam Landry. And those guys play pretty much all like rock-ish funk songs, dance party stuff, which I haven't played in forever because I've been doing the jazz stuff and fusion stuff. And I'm like, man, I have to learn this. And then I got a wedding gig the next day that plays totally opposite. And I'm like, man, I got a lot to learn.
Wait. You had a wedding gig the next day?
Yeah.
You went and played somebody's wedding?
Yeah. It was a wedding gig.
But that's the coolest thing about Tampa.
And I'm like,
it really is. Tampa Bay, you could be doing a big stage one day, and then you play somebody's
here's the funny part. I play Wednesdays and Thursdays at Eddie V's.
Right, with
Theo.
Theo.
Theo, Elias Tona, and Aaron Ferrer. And there's people that know who I play with. They know that I play with Al, and they're very like jazz oriented people.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that, he comes up to me and goes, bro, I have a new respect for you. I'm like, why you say that? He goes, I was watching some documentaries of Chick and watching all this stuff, and Al does come up in that, and you do too. And I'm like, really? No, that's cool. He goes, yeah, a lot of the videos that they come up with Al, you're in it. I got a new respect for you, man, because you're playing at a level, and then you come over here and play for Eddie V. It's like, really? Like you go from here to come down to us. I'm like, I don't see it that way.
Yeah, right.
I don't ever see, I'm playing up here and then I come down here. No, I bring it all the time here. Whether I'm at a small venue, whether I'm on big stage or not. That's who I am. I don't ever see it that way, and I don't ever want to lose that focus because I don't ever want it to get bigger than what I am, because I'm not. I just love the fact of I can play drums with whoever it is, and then go from here and play with, I've always said that bass players and drummers are always married together.
Right.
We married together. I can play with the best bass player, which Elias Toner for me in this town, by far the best bass player, probably in the Tampa Bay, maybe Florida. This dude his ears, and we play together all the time.
Right.
But if I don't get him and I have to play with somebody else, do I just say, well, the hell with it? I'm going to play who I am. I'm going to be who I am. And I don't do that.
Right.
So because your head isn't big.
Yeah. Right. So if I know that you can't play at the level of Elias or the level where I'm at, I stoop down to you where you understand what I'm doing. Yep. My job is to make the band sound good, not just to be there and play because I'm not that guy.
Life is easier when you got a humble heart, isn't it?
It is. And things come to you. Things come to you in a different perspective, and you start to view things in a different perspective. I don't really see myself as. I get compliments all the time, like, "Oh man, you're the best drummer." I'm like, I'm really not. I don't see myself as that because I see other young kids that are just running circles around me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, hey, can I give you a piece of advice? Just tone the ego down some, because it ain't gonna get you nowhere. Right. Now, you do need it. I'm not gonna say you don't. You do need the ego. In this business, you have to have a little chip on your shoulder because there comes a point in time where you can't let people tell you and dictate what you want, what they want you to do. You have to have that. But to have an ego that you can't be told what to do, then I wouldn't have a job.
Right. No, absolutely not.
One of the statements that I heard many years ago was, the bigger the star, the more humble they are. And I know people that were up and coming and they were a nightmare to work with. And then people that were huge and toured the world, and they'd come to me and go, "We are so thankful you're letting us play here." And I was like, what? They really were very humble. But, like you say, you go out and you play with Al and Julio and the big stuff, and then you come here to Tampa and you go sit in and play something local, with an unknown person, right? I used to give so much respect to Casey Grillo, back before he was with Queensryche. He was with Camelot, right? And he'd go on tour with Camelot, tour around, playing 100,000 people at a festival, and then he'd come here, and on Friday night or Saturday night, he'd be with Jeremy Thomas in a little three-piece playing at a bar, at a little nothing sports bar on in St. Pete. And I asked him one time, I was like, "How do you do that?" And he goes, "It's fun. I just like to have fun."
Yeah, but it keeps you humble. Yeah. It keeps you humble. It keeps you grounded, because not for nothing, when the lights and the smoke clears, where do you go to?
Yeah.
You got to come back home. So you can't burn any bridges home. I tell that to everybody. You can't burn your bridges here, because if you do, when you go out on tour and you come back home, and what's going to happen? Look what happened in 2020.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Look what happened in 2020.
Put a hurt.
Right. But you know what? I didn't stop working.
Mm-hmm. Really?
I didn't stop working, no, because then the beach gigs, they were open up for the beach, and people were like, "Hey, man, can you bring a cajon?" I was like, "Sure." I would never say no, like, "Nah, I'm too good for that. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I just got off a tour. I'm going to sit with a cajon." No, let's go. Where you want to go? But those are the guys that kept me working.
So what do you think about, and this is about Tampa Bay in general. At one time, back in the day, this was a very happening live entertainment area.
Yeah.
And then it died. And now we're kind of like in a renaissance thing where live entertainment is really starting to come back. Yeah. So how you?
Well, it's funny because I was not here for that era.
Right.
Right. I'm from Jersey. So to me, I really can't speak on the changes that have been going on because I didn't see them. Right. I didn't see that. Now, from what I hear from Goomby, because Goomby was like, "Bro, we were working 7 nights a week back in the 70s with Fred Johnson, and we were going from club to club, making almost $1,700-1,800 a week in the 70s. That's a ton of money."
Right. Yeah.
He goes, and it was nonstop, and then it died. I'm like, yeah, but because what happens is I think that the more development people started coming in, is they wanted to get. You can't go to the beach now, or even down to Gulfport and play without a noise ordinance.
Right. Right.
Because people now, what became the hot spots for people to go and tour, and the tourism became people wanted to live there.
Right.
And now that people want beachfront property, but they don't want the noise. And that's where I think that's what kind of died out a lot.
Well, that and the DJ thing, where they
Well,
went
yeah,
from having live entertainment
to having a
DJs
DJ, and I get that, and
Yeah.
I totally get that, because it's more affordable. They can keep a DJ there longer. They don't have to pay 5-6 guys to load in and whatever. They pay one guy and he does it all.
Right.
And I get that, but there is a community now that are looking for the live music,
Yeah, exactly.
and they're going to it.
Yep.
The problem is that and this is where I speak out to venues. Venues set up the venue to do that, but they don't think about the musicians first.
No.
Right.
They don't think about, how are we gonna lay out the stage so we can get bands
Yeah,
here?
get power up
They
here
don't
and all
do
of that,
any
yeah.
of that. So that's the last thing they think of, and then they cram us up in a corner and expect us to bring them clientele.
One of the reasons why Bourbon Street was successful as a live music venue and not a bar, not just known as being a bar, is because we catered to the musicians, right? And just exactly what you say. Once live music, once a bar realizes that bands bring people, and it's a sports bar with 200 TVs, they move tables aside to
Right.
put somebody in the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
And they want the live music, but they don't set it up for it.
Right.
And
When we
unfortunately, there's a lot of musicians locally that,
Right.
cover bands or whatever, whether they're originals or not, but they always say, like, we don't want to play a sports bar.
Right.
We don't want to be, move tables aside and do this. They're going to do it because that's what's paying them.
Right.
Right.
But they're not happy.
No.
So when you set a room up for, that live music experience,
Yeah.
it's so much
It's
more
different.
appreciated.
It's different. The band appreciates it.
Right.
Oh man, we got an easy load in, we got easy this, we got easy that. Then what you're gonna get from the band is a really good, comfortable show.
Sure, they're happy to be there.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna knock it out the park versus, oh man, we gotta play this place again. Why?
I remember
Loading
doing that,
sucks,
yeah. I
loading this.
remember doing it.
I love Eddie V's because I don't have to bring anything, because they like, hey, you know what? Why do we have to make these guys bring drums through the restaurant all the time? Put a drum set there. Put a PA there. Get a piano there. All they got to do is walk in, cymbals. It's easy, right? And I like venues that think that way, because then we appreciate the fact that they're thinking about us, about not trying to go through the restaurant, bringing in a bunch of gear and distracting everybody.
When we set up the Fox, our stage was set up specifically. We had the stage built because Fox didn't have the stage
Right.
that we put in. And we had it built up on a riser. We put power right there.
Right.
We had that back mirror, but we went out and spent $2,000 on a custom-made velvet draping
Great, yeah.
to deaden the sound and everything and what have you. But because coming from a music background, I'm thinking the stage has to be able to accommodate a good drum set. It has to have power, so all of the electronic equipment can be covered.
Yeah.
And you have to think on that level, because that affects the room
Yeah,
as
it does.
well. It's not
It
just
does.
a band, it affects the entire room.
One thing I've learned from my mentor, and he's like my dad. Goombi Ortiz is,
Oh, yeah.
he's
Professor
my
Ortiz is
biggest,
what I call him.
he's my biggest mentor. He tells me, we are not musicians. We're liquor salesmen.
Yeah.
Right.
I hate when they say
When
that.
I
when
know.
we say we're not musicians, because at the end of the day, if I can get your butt moving on the floor, then the restaurant makes money.
Right.
But if we're comfortable where we're at, moving people on the floor, then the restaurant is happy.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing with ceviches. We had ceviches to a point
Ceviches
where
was a
you
great
couldn't
place,
fit
man.
nobody, and
Right.
everybody's dancing on top
Yeah.
of each other, but the bar would make so much
Yeah.
money. That's our goal. That's who we are, Now,
Ceviches was-
if the band, and it wasn't the greatest venue for music,
Mhm.
they didn't think about that, because they really thought about making it more flamenco,
Right,
more
right.
acoustic thing. So when the band went in there, it was a ruckus. It was like we went in there to make noise, but people loved it.
Yeah.
No matter we were in Ceviches in Tampa or the one in St. Pete, people loved it because we brought a specific thing, and the energy
Right.
was there. So we didn't really care about how big or small the venue was. We just had a lot of energy. But it is true. We go to some places where you can't bring out that energy because it's uncomfortable.
Right.
The stage is so small, they don't really think about nothing. You're frustrated because the staff don't like the fact that, can you bring it down? I'm like, we haven't even played 2 minutes yet.
Right.
Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
and those things, like they don't think about a band. So I'm lucky enough that when I come home, I still get to work steady 4 or 5 nights a week, you know, but it doesn't interrupt
Your
anything
life.
else in my life and at home, you know, which is great. And that I think that's the goal for any musician, is to be able to choose. I can choose where I want to play. I can choose to say yes. I can choose to say no. That's, to me, that's a really good place to be.
That's
Not
great.
that I have to take everything. I don't want to be. At first, I was taking everything and anything because I wanted to get into the scene until I met Goombi. Then it was like, oh, wait a minute. I attached myself to this guy. It's like, okay, I want to see what he can bring, and not bring me financially, but like I wanted to learn his playing, because I also play percussion,
Right.
you know. But he brought out, and it's funny because Mike tells us all the time. He goes, "I watch you two play. I've never seen a drummer and a percussionist interact the way you guys do. Like, you guys speak the same exact language, and it's like you never fall on top of each other. You're not even looking at each other. You sound like five guys." And I'm like, well, you know, it's a matter of, I have this. I'm also Caribbean, so I was born and raised in that atmosphere,
Right.
being around Caribbean music. So it's second nature to me, you know, so I understand it. But Goombi has another language that I didn't know. And when I learned it from him, I was like, oh, you know, and sometimes I'm a fly on the wall. When I met New Groove City back when they were Latino Project, I was a fly on the wall. I would go to see Goombi every Friday, sit there, not play, sit there for months watching them play,
Yeah.
just watching them play. And then after a while, Goombi was, hey, come here, sit down. I'm like, what happened? He goes, I got to stretch out my arm, and I would play, you know, the congas for him in the second set, and then it became a routine. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I just wanted to be a fly on the wall and hear this guy play, because
Right.
it was impressive, the sound, you know, and even, it's still impressive that at his age,
Yeah.
he
He
has
hasn't
the
lost
energy.
anything. He's got that same soul, that same.
The energy is
He's
insane.
incredible.
It's
He's incredible.
insane. So to me, it's really impressive. Like, I'm like, man, you know, I like, and then sometimes it's the stories that we share. Going on tour with him, it's what makes the touring fun, because
Right.
he keeps everybody laughing. He makes everybody, you know, look at that, you know, that's Goombi Ortiz, yeah.
So it was the January 2013 issue of Tampa Bay's Mayhem magazine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I wanted to kind of pay a little bit of a tribute to some of the local legends, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Johnny
that's
G.
pretty
Lyon,
cool.
Belinda Womack,
Yeah.
John Oliva, Greg Billings, Jeff Fotolo,
Right.
That's pretty cool.
and Goombi. And you know, it was just one of those things. And I had a friend of mine, Gigi. She did
Right.
the caricature of them, right?
That's
And
awesome.
when I did it and I sent it to Goombi, he called me. He says, "Dude, I love this. I love this. This is the best ever." I could have done a photo of everybody,
But yeah,
or
but
even
that's
or
so much
photoshopped everybody
No, but that's
together.
cool.
But
That's cool. That's a great idea.
it was just so funny, and
Wow.
Goombi loved that.
Yeah, no, but he, like I said, man, he's a dad to me. He was the one that told me. I remember the first year we went out with Al. It was 2015, and the first thing that came out of his mouth, because he does treat me like a son. He goes, "The day that this gets in the way of your family, I'm pulling you out."
Wow.
You know, and
Yeah.
that was not
He's definitely a family man.
yeah, that was not somebody threatening me. That was a person with wisdom
Mhm.
that's been through
Right.
losing a family.
Yep.
And he told me, goes, "This gets in the way, I am pulling you out." And I've always remembered those words. And every time we go out, I always remember, hey, man, you're doing this for a purpose. You're doing
Right.
this for a reason. You're here to supply for your family. You know, because I could have been crazy going out to different countries and just being an idiot and losing everything I have at home.
Right.
Or for the fun of what? The sake of having fun for 2 seconds?
Right.
No.
Not worth it.
So I definitely want to ask, with that as a segue. The young people will not understand this. You were on tour with Julio Iglesias. Does he still have women chasing him around even at his age?
Yes.
Golly,
Wow.
Tom Jones, man.
Oh yeah,
Just
People were screaming in the audience, "I want to have your baby."
and he's how old now?
Julio, he's in his 80s. I think he wants to say like an 80, 81.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, dude, people were throwing bras on the stage. I'm talking about huge bras. I'm like,
Huge,
Huge, bro.
not even little
no,
ones.
not little ones, like, oh, grandma bras, you know?
Oh.
And then we had one gentleman jump on the stage. I don't know how he got up.
Oh wow.
And he wanted to kiss him. All he wanted to do was kiss his hand. You know, like people, there was some die-hard fans with Julio. Julio, everywhere we went, sold out
Wow.
at his age. But he sang all his hits.
Oh, I mean,
Everything that
and
was
he
a
had
hit.
a bunch.
Yeah.
So I know he
now,
was, you know.
you would figure, this is a 70-something-year-old man, you would figure that it would be, 60-minute show? 2.5 hours, man.
Wow, really?
Going.
Wow.
It's funny how these guys, a lot of them that are still around, they're still kicking out major
Yeah,
shows.
because they're doing it because they love the people and they love what they do, right? So that energy that you get from the crowd,
Right.
like I get it. You know, some people will never get this because they've never been in those shoes. But I've been there where I've been in arenas where it's full. I've been in stadiums when it's full. You know, my first full thing, it was just an opening ceremony. But I got to do the opening ceremonies with Liza Minnelli in 1994 for the World Cup.
Incredible.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know, so
Yeah.
watching 80,000 people, you're like,
Yeah.
you know, you're sitting there
Takes
like,
your breath
yo,
away.
this is for real. And I'm like, this is for real. This is what it feels like to be in front of 80,000 people. Okay, cool. You go out with Julio, and it's the same thing where you're on stage with all these people. That energy just brings you to the music. You're like, okay, you're doing it for a whole nother reason.
Yeah.
The money, it's like the money's out the window. Now you're like, yo, I'm sitting in South Africa. I'm sitting in Melbourne. I'm sitting in Japan. I'm sitting in Central America, like, you know, going crazy. These people are looking at, you know, I'm on the Jumbotron because Julio sits in front of the drums, and I'm every shot of Julio on the Jumbotron, I'm behind. And I'm like looking at myself on the Jumbotron. I'm playing like, yo, it's for real, you know? So, and those little things like that, and playing with an icon. This man outsold Michael Jackson.
Julio Iglesias?
He outsold
Outsold
Thriller.
Michael Jackson.
He outsold Thriller. When his Thriller came out and Julio came out the same album, he outsold Michael. This dude, I'm telling you, this dude is something else in the Latin American world.
Wow.
See?
Wow.
You know,
That's crazy.
he's huge. You
I
know,
love it.
he's huge. So Julio to me was on top of all that.
Iglesias.
On top of all that, he's a generous guy.
That's great.
He's generous. I mean, you gotta respect him. He didn't get to where he's at because he was, you know, he was a pushover. You know, he wanted things right. It had to be perfect or not at all. It was his way.
Right.
But at the same time, he was generous. You know, when we didn't have a show, he canceled the show. We still got paid.
Wow.
You know, we stood in very nice hotels. We got accommodations for food. Everything was accommodated for us. You know, he never said, no, I'm first and whatever. No, it wasn't like that. You know, usually some artists, they get you like that, where it's all about them.
You're a hired
and you're a hired gun. No, we were all in, and his dressing room was right next to us. It wasn't like he was in a whole separate place. No, you can hear him singing every time.
Wow.
He was warming up the whole time. He was right next to us. So he always wanted to be around his people, you know? So things like that. And now, you know, it's you know who's like that too is Billy Joel. Because I speak with Carl. I play with Carl Fisher.
Right. Okay.
And that's another band that I'm on with Sunshine City Brass. And Carl tells us all the time, he goes, Billy's always in the room. His dressing room is always empty. He's in the room with the guy. He wants to be around his people because that's what makes a good leader.
Right. Right.
You know, you have your people that makes a good leader. If you're by yourself, then you just got hired guns with you. Then you can't trust them on stage. You know, the one thing that Billy he can trust his guys on stage. That if he goes somewhere, his band's gonna follow. You know, Julio was the same way. If you went, Julio would talk. We have a set list, but he would talk about something. I'm like, he's not going there. He's going to this song, and we changed the set list
on the fly.
On the fly, and there was tracks. So I'm cueing tracks at the same time, making sure that okay, that's what he wants. Cue the track. Yep, that's where we're going. Play, and we, you know.
Wow.
And it was like that. It was on the fly, but he was. I can't speak ill. The guy is Julio Iglesias.
Yeah.
You know.
You know going back to like the older guys that are still out there, doing it. I remember several years back at Clearwater Jazz Holiday, they brought out Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
And like
killed it.
he was awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, he just looked like, forgive me, I'm so sorry, but he looked so old. Like he looked like they wheeled him out and stuck him there. But he still put on a show, and it was, at the end, and when you left, it was like he was old, but he was great. It was awesome.
Exactly right.
You
got guys that are out there still. I remember.
But look at AC/DC. They were here last week.
Yeah.
Kicking butt, man. I saw videos of I'm like, yo, look at this.
Literally kicking.
Like, they're old.
Yeah, but Angus is still hopping
But
they're
they're playing. I'm like, yo, okay. You got to respect that. And like I respect that with Al, because Al is also up there and still playing hard and still wanting to prove to the younger generation, to those, hey man, I still got this.
Still got it, yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. His music is a lot of fun, especially the older stuff, Casino, Elegant Gypsy, all that stuff, the RTF stuff. It's a school.
Right.
It really is, because not a lot of guys would want to play that. They don't want to learn a lot, because right now we've gotten to the era of everything is 4 chords and we're good to go, and that's it. Right. I wasn't brought up that way. I was brought up, hey man, these songs are 8 minutes, 9 minutes long, and they all got parts, and let's play them. And I think that's where I've evolved in my playing from the church thing. When I got to Al, where Al's a stickler for very syncopated notes and very articulated notes. So everything's like fusion. It's articulated. Everything's played together at the same time, at the same speed, with the same articulation. And going over parts all the time just makes you get better.
Right.
You don't get worse, you get better. And a lot of people have been through that school, and I'm glad and I'm really honored that I've been part of that school, where I can play the fusion stuff, still play my Latin stuff, but be articulated. We were recording at the Sam Ash Direct thing, the warehouse, and Mike goes, dude, the articulation in those parts that you all played. I'm like, hey, but this is Al Di Meola's rhythm section. What do you want? We all got schooled by the same guy.
Yeah.
So it's gonna come out the way he plays it. It's no, you can't go off of that.
So I want to ask, because I've seen you a couple times now playing at the open houses at Spinelli's, and are y'all sticking to, when you get up there, is it just a jam where y'all are just going back and forth, or is it pieces of compositions that y'all are playing and then filling in between? Because like when they're up there, y'all are up there and they're playing, and you watch keyboard and he looks at you and he goes, and then you go into your groove.
Yeah.
And then then I see you're playing, and then you look over and then the bass player will hit his. But so is it that y'all are just up there freestyling for a while, or are they actual songs that?
So most of the time, so like when I was doing the thing with the open house, when I did it with Jay, he'll call out a tune, like, hey man, 500 Miles from Chick? Yeah. Okay, I'll set it up and then you follow. That's how it goes. Okay. He sets it up. I'm like, okay, so I know the and we come in there and we all play. He takes a solo, and whenever he wants to pass solo over to somebody else, we play the form, solo bass player, but we just keep following the form until the bass player passes back on, and so forth. So there are songs but not rehearsed.
Right, gotcha. It just seemed like y'all were grooving.
Yeah, it's just playing the song through, let this guy solo, and usually when we do that, it's just because the song is only 16 bars. So we know, okay, everything is 16 bars, and we go through that. Now, New Groove City, it's a whole nother animal. It's a jam band with structure. Meaning, a jam band, we just go in, we start jamming. Yeah, but we have intros. We just don't know where they're going to go from there. So we have intros and we have parts, but then the endings are always different because it turns into this chaotic train coming down until we cue it somewhere else. But it always has an introduction. The introductions are always the same. Yeah. Hey, we're doing Camino. Okay, we know the introduction. We're doing this one. Okay, we know the introduction. How it ends? Entirely up. It's up to the crowd. Because if the crowd is into it, then we get more involved where, hey man, create something on the piano by yourself, and then we jump into that tangent. You know, that's like that. Electric Rendezvous? No. Electric Rendezvous was a rehearsed band. There's no jamming. The only jam that they got is solos. And then they cue us when we go to the next part. But everything is specific.
Okay.
Those are specific. The Alan Carmen project is the same thing. It's specific. Even to the solos are specifically, this is how long they are. There's no, and no buts, or no, that's it. That's the way it is. And we play that. So different, and I think that's what kind of separates me, because I play with so many people. And my dad tells me all the time, he goes, how do you remember all the music you have in your head? Because between like Eddie V's, then Al, then Alan, then New Groove City, then Ari, when I was with Ari, I was like, how do you remember all this stuff? I'm like, I don't know. It just, I like the
Well,
music.
that speaks directly to musicianship. You know, you had that early beginning.
Yeah.
That's broad. Anybody who thinks gospel is simple really doesn't know gospel.
Yeah.
That being the basis of everything you do,
Yeah.
that formed your musicianship and everything that you built on top of that.
And I think what really helps me, the fact that I didn't learn how to read until very late in the game, and I still not a great sight reader.
Right.
I'll grab a sheet of music and I'll play along with it, but I can't grab it at first sight. So the fact that I depend on this, like when I did with Phil Magallanes, we did the Steely Dan tribute band, or the, you know, it was like, dude, Steely Dan.
Right.
That music sounds easy. When you play it with the band, you're like, wait a minute,
I was just with
this is complicated stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, and Phil was funny, because then Phil had drum charts. I'm like, okay, cool. At least this will give me. But he goes, yo, but you looked at it, you played it. He goes, yeah, I kind of have a photographic memory
Right.
for music, where I play it and it sticks. And once it's there forever. If I don't play it in a while, I hear it, or I touch up on it, got it, let's go.
So it's kind of like muscle memory.
It's muscle
yeah,
memory for me.
Yeah.
And that's what's helped me, but it's also helped me the fact that when I was a kid, I never read. I just listened to everything and grabbed it that way. And I have sort of, I don't know what to call it. It could be a gift or something like that, but I can hear something for the first time and kind of play for the first time with it and learn the melody as it's going. I can hear where the melody is going and be right on top of it. Like, okay, it's going here, it's going here. A lot of guys don't do that. They just hear it for the first time. They got to grab it. I can hear it for the first time and know, okay, this is going here. And I start singing the melody. People are like, you know the song? I'm like, no, I don't. I have it, like I can see 2 bars ahead. Somehow.
Right.
I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it.
You know who's like that? Lionel Richie.
Really? Yeah.
Does not read music. Never has.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of the guys that you would think these guys
Cemented in music history.
Yeah. These guys
Doesn't read music.
doesn't read music.
Buddy Rich didn't read music.
Right. You would think these guys are professionally trained. No. These guys, this is, you know.
Remember when Tommy Lee did he tried to do his reality show?
Oh,
when
yeah.
He went back to college.
Yeah.
And he tried to go in with the band, and they wouldn't let him on the field because he couldn't read.
Couldn't read
music.
Couldn't read music.
But see, look,
could not read music.
Drumline to me, that movie is kind of my story.
Really?
Where when I got to high school, and the first thing I go into the class, and I'm like, this is a big school, they had a big marching band, and they put me in the music classes. That's I talked to the guidance counselors, like, I want to do music. Okay. I'm sitting there, and then I can never forget this day. Doc Watson, it's his name, and right now Doc, he played sax for Alicia Keys.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he also owned a company called Chop Horn, so they record for everybody. So Doc, at the time, I'm sitting there, and he goes,
Alicia, call me.
and he goes, so freshmen don't play snare drum.
Okay.
I'm like, okay. He goes, yeah, freshmen always start on the auxiliary percussion and this and that in the marching band. I'm like, so he sticks me in front of this xylophone. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? He goes, well, here's the sheet music. I'm like, I don't read music. He goes, so what are you going to do here? I was like, I don't know, man. I'm a drummer. He goes, listen, freshmen don't normally make the drum line.
Nope.
They don't. They don't make the drum line. You wanna make the drum line, you got to come to an audition. The audition's tonight. And I will never forget, Joe Riker became my best friend. I still see him every once in a while. He's come to see me without the Meola. And Joe Riker, I met him that night, and Joe puts a snare drum in front of me and goes, okay, Lutz, here, pulls out a sheet of paper. This is the tune. I'm like, what am I looking at?
Yeah,
He goes, you don't read? He goes, no. He goes, oh, man. He goes, what are we going to do? So he goes, Joe, I love him because to this day, he'll tell me he was the same way. He knew that when he was young, he couldn't read either. And his teacher did what he did to me. He goes, play this, copied it. Play this, copied it. Play this, copied it. Now play all three. No problem. He goes, okay. He goes, he had another drummer who was already a sophomore. He goes, Danny, take him downstairs, show him the first piece of sheet music. Show him just the first piece. See if he can get it. I'm not worried about the sticking, because with marching band, everything is sticking. He goes, I just worry, see if he can get it. Okay. We come back upstairs about half hour, 45 minutes later. And Danny is like shaking his head to Joe. Joe's like, oh man, this kid didn't get it. He goes, no. He learned the whole damn 5-page already. And I go upstairs and I start
Not
playing.
even reading the music, just copying.
I'm just copying, learn the whole 5 pages. And he's like, are you serious? He goes, okay, cool. You're in the drum line. I go in the next day. Doc has a whole band out. I go strap on my drum. And he's looking at me. He goes, did you come yesterday? Did you come to the audition? And Riker comes in the door. He goes, he's good. Don't worry about it. Leave him alone. He's good. And that's how I got my shot with them.
That's
and then
great.
I would start working on the reading of music and then reading of sticking. And I would sit with Danny just sticking until we got it to the point where I did 3 years of marching band with them.
But it was all.
And it was all here. And then I started to go. And then once I left Bayonne High School, because over there you had to live in Bayonne. When my uncle moved and I went back to Snyder High, that's when I met Cliff Reinhardt. Cliff Reinhardt played with Lou Ross. He played sax with Lou. So I was always surrounded by freaking top-notch musicians. So I got to play with Lou Ross when I was a kid with Riker. He was like, Reinhardt was like, you're coming with me to play at the bar. I'm like, hey, we're going to play with Lou Ross. Like, you kidding me? So we would play with him. And I'm like, I was always surrounded. I was always fortunate enough to be surrounded by guys like that. Then I come to Florida and I meet Goombie. First I met Butch. Butch was the one that introduced me. He introduced me to Goombie. Yeah. Yeah. And Butch was like,
Butch crazy.
You talk about Lenny Kravitz, Sting, and he introduced me to
repertoire. Yeah.
And Goombie will tell you, I remember when he came to see me. He came to see me with Butch Thomas at a gig. Yeah. And he tells his wife, he tells me the story. He goes, I told my wife that day that I met you that I was going to change your life. Wow. And he surely did. He sure as hell did, man.
There was two things that you mentioned about drumming, as far as like not reading the music and having the copying of it, the patterns. When I first said to my mom when I was a kid, I want to learn how to play the drums. Of course, she was like, "Oh God, no!" When I went to elementary school, everybody started out on the violin, and then parents had to sit through Twinkle Twinkle and all that, right? Yeah. Everybody butchered that, and as I would say, I want to play drums, I want to play drums, I want to play drums. When I finally got to take a lesson, and they gave me a pad and some sticks, and I was like, "No, I want to play drums,"
right?
And they were like, "No, this is how you're going to learn." I was like, no, I want drums. Yeah. And they were like, that's not how you start. This is how you start. And I hated that, right? And I would I wouldn't want to practice.
No.
I didn't want to do it.
Because that's not a drum.
Yeah. And then the funny thing was then I did get a drum set in the basement and I made all kinds of noise. But the funnier thing was in high school when I said, I want to go out for drumline. And I went and I kicked myself for this. They said to me, okay, well here, have you ever played a drumline snare? I was like, no. But I'm like, I can kill it on the drums. And they were like, okay, here. And they gave it to me. And when I hit it, and it went like this, I was not used to that glass top, that hard top that just reacted hard. Yeah. And I was like, I don't like this.
That's Kevlar.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. Yeah. I don't like this. And I walked away. And 20 years later, you look back and you go, I should have been on the drum line. Right. But I just didn't like that.
And a lot of my chops came from that.
That hot, that hot glass feel of that drumline snare. But Now I love playing. They're awesome. They're fun.
The hardest thing for me to do when I was younger, because if I would play in school and then I would go play in church.
Right.
And you're talking about using these huge corp sticks to going back to a 5A, and you're like, it's messing with your hand.
Yeah.
And then my father would always tell me, he goes, remember, man, you're not playing that snare in church. You got to learn how to play around the kit, with sensitivity.
Right.
And not just playing here. And that was the hardest thing for me to balance.
To transition that.
Transition, because I'm like all day in school and then come here. I'm like, oh, it was weird.
Yeah.
Then I started breaking a ton of heads because I was bashing.
Did you change the size of your sticks depending on what?
I would use those marching sticks on drums, and my dad's like, "You're killing the drum set." Because I wanted to feel the same way. He goes, "You can't do that." And then we would tape them to get them really heavy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so those are things that I've learned throughout the years. Like, okay, dude, that's not gonna. Now it did develop my speed. It did develop my coordination.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it was like I still had to learn how to grab the sticks and play. One thing I learned is funny because I met Peter Erskine in Japan.
Oh, wow.
Through Goombi. And I watched him and I'm like, man, this guy, he's big, he's tall, and he's got big hands. And I use his stick. Right? I use his stick. I use it at Eddie V's because I like the way the ride stick, because it's really pointy. And I like the way it plays on the ride, and I'm watching him play, and I'm thinking this guy's gonna be bashing. No, he's the most quietest delicate touch, and he's still all over the kit, but delicate touch. I'm like, he goes, yeah, dude, it's just a way of gripping. I've learned a way to not kill myself.
Wow.
And I've learned throughout the years, you know what? I'm tired of bashing on drums. Why am I killing myself? So people see me and they play like, bro, you get that big snap from here.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, because I'm not trying to exhaust more energy trying to bring a stick out here. And I'm not 20 years old either. My body doesn't bend the way it used to,
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it's like, so I don't want to be that aggressive anymore. But it is to the point where I've become like, once I bought the Jojo Mayer book and I bought the DVD of the human anatomy and drumming, I was like, yo, this guy's got it. Like, wow. And I bought the book and I started like, you know what? I'm going to focus more on my technique versus anything else. And now it's just like, I can play. And with Al, it's a volume thing.
Okay.
Because Al has tinnitus and drums can get a little bit ridiculously loud for him. So I'm very laid back in what I play, but it's still precise and still fast. So with Al, I've learned how to play really fast and precise, but without all the bashing of volume.
You don't have to kill it.
And I don't have to kill it. And he feels happy. He feels okay. Like sometimes he'll be like, hey, he'll tell the tech, separate the glass, because he has me behind glass. Separate the glass so he can, some of the drums can come through, because I'm not trying to kill it. And a lot of my articulation came through that gig, man, playing almost 10 years, just playing quick on the bell. You hear the Elegant Gypsy recording, the live recording, a lot of it, bro, is super fast. And it's just controlled, but super fast. And people are like, how do you do that? It's just years of practice. It's technique. Once I learned my technique, I didn't have to bash on drums. And at the same time, let the sound guy do his job.
When I was younger,
why do I got mics on the drums?
When I was younger, I like every drummer out there. Okay, I had a hit hard problem.
Yeah,
to the
I
point
started.
Where,
I started that way too.
You're the people that you play with. They turn around, they're like, dude.
Yeah.
Really? Come on.
Right.
So I bought one of the plexiglass casings to put, put in front of the kit, and that helped a lot. I mean, it took, took away some of the, took some of it away, but
it's I think we all go through that phase. We all go through that phase.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think we all go through that phase. It's not just one or two drummer. I went through that phase where I was bashing on stuff. Yeah. And when I started noticing I'm breaking my stuff and how expensive it kept getting, I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't have to play with a 2-piece stick anymore and bash, and like I said, the more now I think drums, you can only get them to a certain level of volume.
Right. And once you achieve that, you're just.
I'm like, hello, you can only get them to a certain volume. After that, now you're just killing, choking drums. And once I learned how to just play the drums, they cut through.
Right.
Yes. And you know, the other thing that I heard, that I learned as I got older was, you know, you hear people say, you don't have to bash the drums. Let the mics do the work for that.
Especially if you're mic'd up. Yeah, you don't have to be doing all that.
You just play softly and they'll adjust the volume out there. But you can't change your brain. You know, you can't do that.
No.
But, you know, to go back a little bit of what you were saying, you know, as far as learning by ear and sight on the drum line. Remember, I saw an interview a long time ago with Sheila E.
Oh, yeah.
And the way she learned was her dad set up his drums in front of her, right? And then he said, okay, copy me. So she did everything he did.
Right.
But now it looks left-handed because it's backwards. Yeah. And that's the way she learned how to play it. And I mean, that her dad, you know, legend, right? Yeah, but, absolutely. You know, going forward, she didn't read. She learned by ear and sight, but
certainly,
you know, she learned literally by just like you know, okay, do this. Okay, do this. Right. Okay, do this.
Right. Remember, but it's also, you know, I honestly think that a lot of where you grew up at, you know, we weren't rich.
Right.
We grew up in a poor neighborhood.
Yep.
So we didn't have resources.
Right.
I didn't have resources.
You weren't classically trained.
No, I didn't have the resources for that. My dad was not going to put me in a music school. Where? We didn't have that in where we lived. And if we did, it was expensive for my dad having a family and he was the only one working. So I had to accommodate. And I think that's what makes sometimes it makes the musicians when I see them where they're brought up at. Right. Now you get some that are really good that have been brought up in some nice places, and you know, mom has given them all the resources, and dad has given them all the resources, and it's great. But there's nothing like a kid that's growing up in a place where it doesn't have the resource, but it has the will and the hunger.
It has to grind it out.
That kid is, I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, he's gonna make it more than the kid that got all the resources. Sure. You know, and I felt like I was in that position where I didn't have resources, man. I didn't have nothing to listen to but old videotapes. And I would have to borrow a VCR to plug it into a TV that had those UVF channels and all that, the channel 3 and this and that. And
back when we were the remote,
you know, you know, so it's like
change that channel.
You just talked about growing up in my house. Okay.
Yeah, so that's and a little TV that was maybe 13 inches, trying to plug into the back of a VCR and trying to do that, and like, okay, and then rewind it. And then, oh, I missed that. Rewind it, and then by the time, oh man, you had to get a piece of tape to put the tape back together.
Okay. You just said VCR. Half the people watching this don't even
know what that is. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that's where I grew up. And then, going to a library to pick up something. Yeah. Because I didn't know what a bookstore. Bro, Columbia was the biggest thing for me. When Columbia came out and they were giving you all those CDs for $1, I was like, that's me. That's me. And then at the end of the year, you owe 100 and something, you know? So it was like, but that's where I got all my information from, you know, either a library or that. So to me, it was, I think it's really important to know that the background of a musician and where they come from kind of marks where they're going to go. Certainly. You know, it really does, because if you have the hunger and will, but you don't have the resources, that hunger and will is always going to overpower whatever resources you have to move forward and get it. And that's how I've always saw myself. I've always saw myself like, man, I remember I was working a 9-to-5 job with a company here in Florida. And I'm sitting there going like, man, I'm just speaking into existence. I want to play music full time.
Right.
I want to play. I don't want to do this. I mean, I have to, but I want to play music full time. And 2015 became the day. And the only thing is, like, I really and I'm going to shout them out because they are my friend Mark Roberts and his father Roger Roberts from Microlumen. You might have seen them at the Rays. They have a big billboard on the right center field that says Microlumen. They make medical devices. I was there for 9 years, and Mark is he won't tell you this because he can play guitar. He's a guitarist. Mm-hmm. He follows Al. He worships Al. I mean, this dude, he actually tried out for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, get out of here.
You know,
Wow.
he's
He
a real,
plays,
he
yeah.
plays. But Marcus, he's a clean cut dude, and that wasn't his image. Fine. When I tell him I'm going out with Al, he goes, "You going out with who?" Al DiMeo. He goes, "Dude, whatever days you got to take off, go." So I'm like, okay. So he let me do that for the first year. But when Julio came across, and I told him, I said, Mark, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do with the job. I don't want to lose my job here. It's great. It's a great company. You guys treat me well. He goes, but this guy's going on tour for months at a time. Is there a way I can take a day? He goes, listen, I'm going to do something for you, man. As an employer, I don't want to see you go. You're great. But as a friend, I'm telling you, you got to take this opportunity. You got to go. If it doesn't work, doors are always open. That was 2016.
That's a great day.
He goes, I don't want this to be the crutch that you can't move forward. Because then you know you're gonna fall back on this. No, the doors will be open here. You always have an open door. But just go, man.
Mm-hmm.
So I really thank Mark and his dad for allowing me to do what I do, because he was the one that said, you know what, go, man. Just do it. He goes, I know what it's like to lose that opportunity. Go, take it, go.
The trajectory of success is amazing.
Yeah, so I always go back. I see him all the time. I go back to the company. Those guys are huge now, you know. And as soon as I walk into, you coming back? I'm like, no, not yet, not yet.
Just a visit, just a visit.
But it's. I love the fact that guys like Mark believed enough in me to say, hey, you know what? Just go. They didn't have to. He could have been like, no, dude, I want you to be here. It's either here or you go. You know?
Well, you know, that's got to say something about you and your character and the work that you did for them.
Yeah.
Okay, because if you had been a mediocre employee, that opportunity may not have come along. So, you know, they believed in what you demonstrated.
For sure, and definitely.
Yes.
He did, and I really do appreciate him and the company for allowing me to just go.
That's incredible.
And that's also the big difference between a boss and a friend.
Right.
You know, he
Absolutely.
respected you.
As a friend,
Yes.
not as a boss, as a friend. And I really do. And I really respect them all those. And I wish those guys, I mean, their success is unreal. Like these guys, they're big, they're huge. You know, so it's nice to see that. And it's also nice that they recognize when they see that I'm on, hey, Louis, man, great job. You're on tour. You're doing this. And that they love it. And Mark's always been a big fan of what I do.
That's great.
So it's nice. But yeah, man, so this, like I said, I honestly think that being ready, this has always been my thing. Being ready, this is not a game of it's luck. It's being at the right place at the right time,
Around the
but,
right
but
football.
being ready.
Mhm.
You got to be ready. A lot of guys. So I tell people, listen, if you like a certain genre of music and you like a certain genre or an artist, then make sure that you study that, because and it may come to existence that something in that realm will come to you, right? And you're ready for that.
Right.
But if you sit around just wishing and wishing and wishing, but not preparing for it, when it does come, are you ready? That happened to me with Meola
Right. Yeah.
in 2013. Me and Gumbi, we already have our friendship. He goes, I was looking for a percussionist for Europe. And I tell Gumbi, I said, Gumbi, I'm not ready for that. I knew I was not ready for that. Because I'm like, I don't know his acoustic stuff. I don't want to just start learning now stuff just to take a gig. And I told him respectfully, I said, I don't want to make you look bad, and I don't want to make myself look bad. You know? But little did I know that in 2014, he was going to start Electrik Rendezvous, and that was going to set me up for the
that
Al
next-
Meola gig.
right.
Because I knew already the tunes, I was comfortable with it, and that's what set me up. You know? But at first I was like, I don't want to do that. That's
Right.
I can't. That's Al Meola. I'm not going to go over there and disrespect the music. I don't read like that, you know? So you have to know your boundaries as well. You can't just take a gig just because
for
it's
taking
whoever
the
it
gig,
is and
yes.
just taking the gig,
Right.
because you're going to look bad. And that reputation follows you
Everywhere you go.
because these people all talk to each other.
Yep.
The world is nothing, man. The music world is really
Very
small.
Yeah.
And they all know, and the good ones know each other very well. So I tend to really pride myself in my loyalty to artists, my loyalty to the people who I play with, and respect the music,
Right.
you know, and try to play it as best of my ability to what I know, you know, and not disrespect it. But there's kids right now that just want to play, and they're thinking about, oh, how can I make the next couple $1,000 I can buy my car and then dip.
Hmm.
Dude, it doesn't. We're living in an era of everything's a download.
Yeah, self-gratification.
You know, and you can't do that. You can't live that way. Unfortunately, but that's where the era of music is going to. And I wish I hope it doesn't. But by that time, I don't want to be playing.
Well, then that'll take me to this question. 2025. You're at a place where you're comfortable. You've got family now. You've got a great musical history. Going forward, 2035. Who are you? What are you doing? What's going on?
2035, you talk about 10 years, I'll be closer to 60. And at that
What
time,
do you want to say? What do you want it to be said about you?
At that time, that that Lewis was a great hang. It was always a pleasure to play with Lewis. It was just an outstanding guy. Not that I was a showboat, not that I was about me. That's what I want people to. I'm not trying to leave a huge legacy. My legacy. I don't really see myself in that. And I want to be able to produce more in the studio, records, and all that stuff. That's never gonna die. Music, in that sense, people always gonna record. So I want to have more of that under my belt in production. And it's funny that you say that because I got a gig coming up June 7th with an artist called Amari Leah. She's from Bradenton. She's 23 years old, right? And she called me just to see, because I've never met her. She called me just to see who I am, and we start talking. I go, I want to motivate the younger generation to move forward in the music industry so it doesn't die. So we talked about all that. So my thing is maybe to be in 2035 a mentor to those who are coming up in music, not to make the same mistakes that a lot of us have made in the beginning, and you're gonna make the mistakes no matter what, but at least to guide you in, like, don't go that way, don't do this, take it serious, study another 10, 15 minutes a day more than what you normally do, take it serious. I do that with my kids now. My kids, I know that they like what I do.
Mhm.
Do they want to do what I do? Maybe not. Because they don't really see the hard work. They don't see the dedication. They don't see that while they're sleeping, I'm studying.
Right.
I'm at 1 o'clock,
Right.
2 o'clock in the morning looking at stuff, studying. Now, do I want that for them? No. But if it comes across for them later on, I'll support it. Most definitely 100%. But in 10 more years, all I want is for people to realize that, man, Lewis, I think as of now, I really do think I'm leaving a nice imprint in the Tampa Bay area, even though it's not considered my first home.
Right.
But I think I've done more here in the Tampa Bay area than I've done anywhere else in New York or in Jersey. And I think the imprint that I left here, I think is nice, to the point where I'm respected amongst a lot of my peers, where I'm the go-to guy. And not that I try to sound cocky, not that I don't like that. I don't like that word, but where I'm the first call. And I'm really glad that I've left that imprint, that I'm the first call for a lot of people here in Tampa Bay. I feel very fortunate to have been surrounded by some amazing people, not just musicians, just people that are willing to put their time into my craft, And that's what I want to see in 10 years. I just want things to just look kind of what they're looking at now, but without me playing as much. I don't want to play as much. I just want to be able to see them succeed and see them, look, there's your success. Go get it. Go get it. Go chase it,
And I think that that's going to be a contribution that'll be available to you going forward, without a doubt. There are a lot of opportunities and a lot of young people that need what you've got.
Yeah, guidance, stuff that I didn't have when I was young.
Right.
Because I was, like I said, I was really sheltered in the church, so I couldn't really play outside. Like, okay, I remember my first opportunity that I threw it away. I threw it away, not because it was just the fact that I knew my dad was not going to let me play in this band. I got a phone call from a friend of mine, Dwayne Nesmith. We went to high school together. Dwayne is a killer piano player. I mean, this dude is insane. Hey man, there's a new band starting up. We need a drummer. It's a male group band, and I want you to play drums. I'm like, Dwayne, my dad's never gonna go for me to play with these guys. You know, we play in church and this. And I go, come on, man, it could be big.
A metal band.
No, all men vocal group.
Men vocal group.
Jagged Edge.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
The craziest thing.
All because I told myself, no, they won't let me play. They won't let me play in that.
I remember growing up, because I grew up in church as well. Dad was, not a little preacher. He was a big time minister.
That's my.
And I was.
Well, that explains a lot now. Now I know. They say the preacher's kids are the worst out there.
Exactly. But
You heard it first.
outside of singing, I was also a dancer.
Right.
We're talking back in the late 70s, early 80s. I used to sing and dance and compete in clubs.
Yeah.
And I do it on the slide so nobody would know about it. But then eventually my father found out, never said a word. Well, he had a Sunday morning radio show. And after the radio show, he would drive over to the church, and I was with him that morning. And there was like the deacons and, the trustees standing out in front of the church, and my father went, oh God. And he said, go over to the house, which was the parsonage connected to the church. And he said, I'll be there in a while. He got out. They needed to talk to him. The conversation was, well, we're not sure that it's okay for Mark to be running around in some of these places, singing and dancing with these kids out in the street and everything else like that. And it's just not right. My father turned to them and said, and who exactly do you think gave him the talent to do all of that stuff? Okay? You don't get to tell him how he's going to use God's gift. It's this right now. You don't know what that's going to be tomorrow. So no, we're not going to do this. But he went to bat for me because he understood.
Yeah, and that's like my dad. My dad, if I would have just told my dad, maybe, hey Pop, this is a band that may be going somewhere. Maybe I would have got the opportunity, but because I already knew.
You shot it down.
I shot it down because I already knew where the umbrella that I was under. I was like, they're not gonna go for this, man.
Right.
A couple years later, dude, Jagged Edge pulls out, and I see Dwayne, and he's still producing with. I'm like, damn it. That's when I told myself that I would never turn down a gig that I knew I could do. I turned down Al the first time with Goombie because it was an acoustic. I just wasn't ready for that. I knew I wasn't ready for that. But I said I could never turn down another gig like that.
See, I snuck mine through the back door. Dad found out about it.
So then I started playing out when I got here. So I was already a grown man. I was 26 when I got here, so I was already grown. But when I got here, I met Andrew Maldonado, and that's when I ended up playing more in the salsa world. And I was playing with Richie Ray, Bobby Cruz, and those guys like that. I mean, megastars, La Fania All-Stars. These are the cream of the crop of salsa industry. And I'm like, yo, how did I get here? And they just kept going forward, and every year more forward and more like this. I'm like, to the point where I'm like, I don't see myself, like the way other people see me. Like, oh man, I'm like, I don't see that. I just see.
You're just you.
I'm just you. I'm like, hey man, let's have a good time.
Every time we sit and talk, I learn one more thing about you.
He was a dancer.
I had no idea that you could have been Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
You could have been up there.
I can't play drums. I can't play a piano.
But you can sing and dance.
I can sing and dance, man. Yes, sir. Yeah,
all right.
I can sing and dance.
Let's talk about where can we see you in the next couple months? Where are you locally?
Well, locally, you guys can see me every Wednesday and Thursday at Eddie V's. I did have I'm on and off at Grace Family Church on Saturdays. And then usually Instagram and Facebook is where I kind of post where I'm going to be at, on a weekly basis. And now that, like I said, now that I'm not on tour, now I'm being able to freelance a little bit more on the weekends and play a little bit more. But if you always want to come see me on Wednesday and Thursdays, I'm at Eddie V 7 to 10. You want to hear some jazz, R&B, a little bit of Motown, that's the place to go. And then if I'm trying to get Electrik Rendezvous to start pushing out some festivals.
Oh, cool.
And once we do that, then we'll let everybody know. But that's going to be a
Festival
big
market
thing. Yeah.
really big right now.
Yeah, right now.
Really big right now.
Especially with that type of music, with the rock type of fusion thing that we're doing. So we're trying to push a lot of that. A lot of it right now is me trying to focus. I took the year to focus. It'll be a year now that I've been off the road in August. So I've been focusing on my family, but also focusing on the rest of the career with the bands that I have. So I'm trying to get them to place in order, so that way I don't have to depend on an artist to make any ends meet. And right now I'm good, and I'm in a good position where I don't have to. So I want to be able to put all that energy into the bands that we created.
Good. Awesome.
And get some new records out, new things out. But it's just a matter of time. And it's like everything else. We got to water it, let it grow. Water it and let it grow, and watch it blossom.
Dude, I appreciate you taking the time to sit.
Oh man, well I thank you guys, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Always fun.
Yeah.
Anthony with Mayhem Local Live.
Mark Perry, Mayhem Local Live.
All right, y'all.
And Luis Alicea, I don't know who's local, but I don't know what local I get.
All right, y'all.